we are going to continue with media availabilities here today at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We are now joined by Rajah Caruth, driver of the number 71 Spire Motorsports Chevrolet. We will get right to questions. We'll start right up here.
Hi, Rajah. Crystal Clay Racing Refresh. You talk about kind of downplaying your success last year and getting your first win here. Looking back at that Rajah Caruth and today's Rajah Caruth here at Vegas, how do you feel differently? Like, what's the biggest difference between those two? And also, how are you actively approaching huge successes like that now that you say that you kind of missed out on a little bit of it?
Yeah, so I think myself right now compared to last year, I would say for me, like, I'm kind of just focused on executing tonight more than anything. Just like last season started out really well. We're able to finish both the plate races and get out of those tracks with being in a good spot in points, and it's kind of been the opposite to start this year. So I think above all for me, like, we want to just kind of finish the race tonight and be there at the end, and not take ourselves out of it just because of for the trucks, right? It's a relatively short year before the playoffs start. So I think besides that, I feel more just confident in myself and just trusting my experience more than anything compared to last year. And I think it's really nice just the culmination of what my experience has done since I remember my first Xfinity race here in 22, and that was Xfinity race 4, first time here. I'd run like 2 truck races and was running for ARCA points, and to kind of look back at things now, it's pretty nice to see kind of how I've matured over time. But and as far as for the future success, I mean, for me, success is essentially just doing kind of my job and doing the little things right in my preparation through the week and executing like a machine on race day. So yeah, I think that's really it, and hopefully tonight goes well for us. We haven't had the best start of the year, but hopefully things go smoothly tonight and we have a good race.
Should you win, like, what's that celebration looking like? Instead of kind of playing it down, what are we thinking bigger than what you did last year?
Well, if we win tonight, we got a couple of friends in town, so I maybe probably won't be able to downplay it for sure, but it'll be fun. It'll be nice to have like I said, some friends and family in town to support me at the racetrack, and hopefully it'll be a good night for us and we can have some fun. Yep.
Do we have any other questions for Rajah? Let's go to Zach, and then to Lee, and then to Chris.
Zach Sterniolo, NASCAR.com. Rajah, how do you is it easier to put the rough start to the season results-wise behind you, knowing that those tracks are so much different than what's ahead for the meat of the schedule, especially starting tonight with a 1.5 mile track?
Yeah, definitely it is, Zach, from like a performance standpoint, because it's not like we ran bad at those tracks, it just didn't finish. So it's nice to kind of get to some legit, I shouldn't say illegitimate, but some racing where it's more determined by driver skill, which Atlanta was, I think, but now it's like with no engine restrictions and actually handling kind of mattering, it's kind of getting into the bread and butter of the season. So I think it'd be different if we went to Phoenix, we went to Coda, and we were in this spot, because those are like racing where it's not as much of a wild card, but that's kind of the nature of the truck schedule, kind of starting a little bit hectic and taking a little bit before we get into the schedule. But I feel good about the next 3 racetracks for sure, tracks I've run well at and have got some good experience at. So it'd be nice to kind of rebound from the start of the year at Daytona, Atlanta tonight, and then start for the next 2 weeks.
How important is it to leave here with a solid finish and build that momentum into that stretch of races, and capitalize on the confidence that you've built in yourself through the offseason?
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's not a question about winning a race this year. It's just a matter of when, and hopefully it's more than once. But until that comes, we just have to finish races and get stage points. We'll be in a good spot tonight, starting inside the top 10 and being on the top. I feel good about that just to start the race. So I think for me, it doesn't change my approach, just because for me, I'm just looking at it a lap by lap positioning, and doing so by positioning myself in the best spot that I can be, whether it's making sure I protect my right side or not throwing a bad block, or making sure I don't get my air shut off, stuff like that. So I'd say that's more where my mind's at.
Let's go to Lee and then Jeff.
Lee Spencer, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Rajah, did it kind of take a weight off your shoulders to get that win? Because had you gone through the entire season without it, it just kind of weighs on a driver, I would think.
Yeah, I think, but also it kind of did the opposite of getting it so early in the year. It was like, you have to be able to like rise to that occasion again. And we were close a handful of times. I think about Charlotte, the second Bristol, Nashville, Talladega a little bit, and we had times where we were that good, I think, to win again, but ultimately it didn't happen. And then I think reflecting on last year, we weren't one of the best 4 teams. We would be a 5th to 8th place team, and obviously we finished the year 7th in points. So I think for me it was great to accomplish that early in the year, but it really set the bar really high for the rest of the season. So now I kind of know what it takes to achieve that, and I'm glad I had that experience this year, or last year going into this season.
And having veterans like Kyle Busch and Justin Haley, enter into the Spire fold and race with you, is there anything you can glean from having veterans like that as teammates?
Yeah, it's great to be with KB, with Justin. I've spent a lot of time with Michael over the winter, and obviously Carson as well, just because obviously those guys are racing on Sundays, and that's where I want to be. And anything I can learn from those guys is amazing. So it's great. Last year, Kyle was able to run with us in the simulator a little bit for Texas and Darlington, some tracks, so that was really fun. And hopefully kind of the schedule pans out for the Cup guys. They have a lot more going on, and I can see from their perspective, and it's like, I don't want to do truck sim, but it helps us, especially for myself that, like I said, is looking to be there one day. So it's invaluable to have those guys be teammates with us and be in the meetings and kind of be a part of our processes, so I can see where I need to get better at.
Let's go to Jeff and then Chris.
When you won last year, you knew you were going to win again. I'm sure you're very surprised that it's been a year since then. So how do you then avoid pressing or making mistakes or letting it spiral into I've got to do this again, and so now I'm going to try too hard or overstep? Like, how do you hold yourself back from doing that when it's been a year?
Honestly, I'd really credit that to Josh Wise and Scott Speed that are kind of helping me in the Chevrolet program. We had Matt Spear, that was our mindfulness coach for the last handful of years, and my therapist as well, just of it's really not the end of the world, you may put that pressure on yourself of I got to win this race, I got to have this outcome, but it's really not that deep. You just have to execute and do your best, and if it works out, great. If not, you just adjust and go from there. And I don't mean that from a nonchalant perspective, but just more of just not putting the world on my shoulders, because I'm going to do my best. I'll do the preparation, and if it works out, that's great. And if not, we'll adjust and go forward. So it's, I hate to say it, it's really not that deep at the end of the day. I'm going to do my best, and I feel good about our chances, and our trucks are fast. And I'll put myself against any of those guys in the truck field. Everybody's really good, but I'm confident in myself too. So, yeah. Yeah, for sure. The results will come. It's just kind of doing the work and the processes and operating as much through instinct, like Christopher was talking about earlier, and not as much off of emotion in those race scenarios. When it's really the intensity gets up and excitement can happen, it's just kind of executing and leaving emotion out of it as much as possible.
Let's go to Chris and then Jerry.
Chris Knight, catchfence.com. Rajah, 2 quick questions for you. Have you noticed any feel behind the wheel with the recent rule changes in the NASCAR Chrysler Truck Series this season?
Yeah, I think, they're just kind of like with the Cup stuff, obviously with the bodies being straight up. Xfinity, they took the skew out in 2023, and their bodies are straight up, and naturally in the trucks they're just taking more and more kind of side force out with getting our bodies straighter, and kind of some new pan rules as well from last season to this year. So it's kind of closing the field up, but you kind of saw at Rockingham it for some tracks, the Fords and Toyotas will be really good just because of how their bodies are and everything, and then some tracks the Chevrolets will be better because of how our bodies are. So as a handling perspective, I think it's not been too different. It's just a little tougher in traffic just because of those rule changes, but nothing kind of out of the ordinary. I mentioned the Xfinity rule change a couple of years ago, and I ran my first Xfinity races in 22 with the truck arm stuff and the skew, and now they're kind of more straight up. And from 22 to 23, it was kind of a night and day difference for me of just tighter and having less maneuverability in traffic than you did before in those cars. So I think, just a little different in traffic, the biggest thing, but not much of a difference by themselves.
And can you talk about the relationship between you and Mr. Hendrick and how much it's grown in the last year? You know, last year, he kind of jumped on board to help you solidify the full season, and now you haven't had to worry about sponsorship for this year like you did last year.
Yeah, I think I'm just really, really thankful for Mr. H, Miss Linda, Brian, Chase, Daryl, Jeff, Gary, everybody at the automotive group for like believing in me. To be honest, I think they kind of just took a leap of faith with me in 23 when I ran the Xfinity car at Phoenix, and then they've just supported me really up through the way, through the success and the wrecks and everything in between. So I've been really thankful to have their support, and hopefully I continue to kind of garner it as we go. But even if it ended today, I'd be super thankful just because I wouldn't have been racing full time last year probably if not for them, and I'm just really thankful for that opportunity, and hopefully I can continue to make the most of them and represent them proudly.
All right, we're going to go to Jerry and then over there in the back.
Jerry Jordan, KickingTheTires.net. Real quick, tonight when you take the green, it's going to be like 45 degrees and 10-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
Cold.
Yeah.
And with some stronger gusts, how will that be for you fighting that in the truck? What will the track conditions do to your driving style?
Yeah, I think the wind, like it was a little warmer last year, so we had a little bit more tire dig in practice, and I noticed that today, like I was wide open for a long time by myself, and practice was kind of a little bit of a skewed lap time chart, I think, because a lot of people were able to draft because of just how cold it was, and for me, I just ran by myself the whole time. So I think the wind was a factor for me in practice, and I think it'll probably be the case in the race, specifically over through the center and the exit of turn 3 and 4, just because of how it's blowing. The trucks they move a lot in the wind. Even qualifying at a plate track, they dance around a lot, and it'll be a factor tonight for sure. But it'll be important to like take that into consideration when you're kind of thinking about the balance of your truck and what you're telling your guys, and kind of just like, I know it's doing this, but this is why. So that's kind of my thought process.
Let's go to the back over there.
Hey, Rick, UNW Report. How's it going, Rajah?
What's up, bro?
This is off the wheel stuff, but I know this track's gonna have a special meaning for you down the road, but have you had the chance to kind of just take in, as you made your way to this facility, kind of seeing your win and graphics and photos, just knowing like you're cemented in the track's history?
Yeah, it's super great, bro. Good to see you again. I think it was nice to see like the banners and stuff coming in the racetrack. That was pretty cool. Same with kind of seeing the stuff downstairs. A new experience for me, so hopefully it's not the last for sure, but it was definitely great to kind of see that history, and I'm thankful to have received that. So hopefully we go and can maybe repeat tonight. If not, there's 22 other races that we go to that I feel like we can do it at. So I feel pretty good about it.
Awesome. You obviously did a lot of iRacing growing up, and you still do. So I saw you mention there the other day that Vegas, the new scan is super realistic. So even as a guy who's running in the top 3 series, how important is it for you to keep getting these reps at home when you're not on the track or on the actual simulator? Yeah,
that's a really good question. For me, I look at it as this, right? Like you mentioned the guys that run the high limit stuff or run late models more frequently than not, and for me last year I ran maybe one late model race and a little bit at Millbridge, and I think a lot of times with how the truck schedule has the 2, 3, 4 week gaps in between races, it's hard to kind of keep the rhythm going. And I think that was where I was lacking a little bit last year when Corey, Daniel, Taylor, like those guys were running Xfinity races, and Ty would run his late model at places like that, and I felt like that's something that would help me. So the biggest thing that I can do that's in my hands to get better is just race. So sim racing is the most available thing for me. You can game it, and you got to kind of like tread lightly in that department, but it's a useful tool for the most part. So I just try to use it wisely and not go overboard with it. But it's a useful tool for sure, just because I don't get to race as much as I would like to, but it's the next best thing. So, yeah.
We'll take our final 2 questions from Crystal and then Zach.
So recently you got a shout out from Roy Wood Jr., and I just wanted to know if you've had any difference in your interactions with people or just outside of the track since then, and kind of how that's been developing since last year coming up.
Yeah,
to now.
no, that was cool. That Atlanta was crazy. I guess my dad had gotten to the racetrack. I didn't really know that, but and then he sent me that clip, so that was pretty cool. But I think for me, like it's just really important for me to kind of get the sport to like my culture. Whether it's sports, music, acting, really the whole nine, and really just create an understanding of how the sport is more welcoming than the perception of it is. And to have that shout out from Roy was pretty cool. And hopefully it's not the last. I think especially when we go to these markets like Vegas or Nashville, Charlotte, Richmond, and really popular areas, I think it'll be important to continue to get guests like that to the track. So super, super excited about that.
All right, we'll wrap with Zach.
Going back to what Jeff was asking you about, you had said effectively that it's not that deep. I think back to your tweet earlier this week, listening to the Carl Edwards thing and the perspective.
Dude,
that
thing was amazing.
Right.
I thoroughly enjoyed listening to that episode.
It was pretty raw. There was a lot of good stuff from that. But when you hear that from former drivers who lived or died by their results, how does that impact your perspective on that as someone who's coming up through the ranks still?
Yeah, I think it's just nice because it doesn't put that pressure on myself. Carl had mentioned that he had in his notebook he literally said, if I win, I'm good. If I'm not, like, I'm going to crash out. And it's like, for me, like, I literally had that same mentality for the longest. I've kept notebooks since I started racing, and I had that mentality for a long time. And it worked at first because I would perform well and have that success. But then compared to other sports, you lose way more than you win in racing. So that was a really hard thing for me to work through. And like I mentioned, the Josh, Scott, Matt, the people in the Chevrolet program, my circle, they just really helped me work through that of just understanding, like, to detach from the outcome and just focus on your process and not defining success or your happiness based off of how stuff at the racetrack goes, because you could do everything right. You could do your homework. You can execute it to a T, and you could hit oil on the racetrack. You could run over a pin and start at the back. I mean, you could get hit in the door and cut a tire. I mean, literally anything could happen. So just detaching from that is the biggest thing, and honestly, it's helped me get better. That's how I ran better last year, and obviously, hopefully, we'll continue to do that this season. Yeah.
All right, thanks for the time, and good luck today.